there. Right now, sadly, we have to continue talking about the new district attorney for the county of Los Angeles because he is already, frankly, an abomination to the people, and most importantly, sadly, in the latest developments, not just the people of Los Angeles, but to the actual victims of some of the most heinous crimes that you'll ever think of. He is not on our side. Every move that he has made so far is not for the spirit of the law, not for the spirit of justice, not for the spirit of public safety of the people of Los Angeles. It's really every move that he has made is on behalf of the criminals, the people who have already been tried and put behind bars. There's not even a question as to whether they're guilty. He's going back and basically giving relief to those who have already been found guilty, let alone those cases that he's going to drop, those that should be put behind bars. Let's talk about the latest with L.A. County District Attorney George Gascon. Joining us is Craig Lally. He's the president of Los Angeles Police Protective League. Craig, thanks for joining. I think you were the last person I talked to before I went on vacation, and sadly, this story continues to mount.
Yeah, well, welcome back from your vacation, Larry. Yeah, it's well, we said this was going to happen during the campaign. Anything he put out, it was for the criminal, and nothing was said about victims and victims' rights. And last week he told the media you had a victim's mother who was asking for justice for her child that was kidnapped, tortured, and killed by gang members. You know what he told her? He told her that she was uneducated. And if some of your listeners don't believe that was said, you can go to LAPD.com and hear it for yourself.
Yep.
So that's just an example. We knew this was coming, but honestly, even in my own mind, I never thought that he could be as cold, as callous to a victim, especially a victim of a child. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I saw this Friday evening when Bill Malusian, our friend over at Fox 11, posted this video. Let me quote the District Attorney of Los Angeles here. As a woman, a grieving mother whose son was tortured by these, I'll save the pejoratives, by these convicted murderers. She said, he replied to her and said, "It's unfortunate that some people do not have enough education to keep their mouth shut so we can talk." My God, the arrogance, the unfeeling disdain for somebody going through the worst possible thing. She'll never get past this, Craig Lally. I don't care how long ago this horrendous moment was. This is, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, this is a disqualification for holding public office, because clearly he doesn't wish to represent this poor woman.
Well, what you have, Larry, is you got two defense attorneys in the courtroom now. I would expect this maybe from a defense attorney, but hearing it from the prosecutor, they're supposed to represent the victims of these crimes, and not only the victim himself, but this is coming from the prosecutor, not the defense attorney. It's despicable.
He's issued an apology now, according to Fox 11. It's been written up a bit here. It's kind of an apology. Let me read it to you, and I'd love to get your response to this, Craig. While speaking to colleagues outside of the office, there were individuals yelling on opposite sides of the crowd. I did not understand what they were yelling about until later, let alone that they were victims. Regardless, it's not how I should have reacted. Clearly, this family is in pain, and I will be contacting them to speak directly and hear them out. The defendants in this case are all facing life in prison. Forgive me, Craig Lally, for a moment. I'm told this is an apology. I didn't hear him say I'm sorry anywhere in there.
Well, and you're not. And the bottom line is there was a lot of public outcry over that, so he's kind of at the best as he can to cover his tracks. But my question is, Larry, why isn't he reaching out to these victims when he's putting these cases on?
Yeah.
I mean, if I was the DA, I'd be reaching out to you and go, I'm going to do the best I can to make sure this person never sees a day of light. He's not. He doesn't care about the victims. What does it matter if he's reaching out after, or potentially a week or two from now, he's going to reach out to this lady and apologize maybe. The number one thing is, a prosecutor, you're supposed to be representing not only the victims, but the victim's family. Where's the dialogue with these people? He has none. Zero.
Well, and Craig, I think that the people need to understand this, because there's this perception that, you're great men and women who wear the badge in the LAPD. Your job is to enforce the law, gather evidence, help catch the bad guys when they commit a crime. Then, of course, it's the DA's office to actually try these people for the crime. But when they do that, they're not representing the victims. There really isn't we assume that that's the voice of the victim speaking through the DA's office, but it clearly is not, sir.
And that's why you have victims testifying when a person is found guilty in a courtroom by a jury. They get to come up and speak as victims of the family members get to speak. What's the point of having these people come in when they should be coming in and telling a jury and a judge that this is going to change their lives forever? You're taking that whole thing out of the equation now.
And by the way, the crux of this is his decision unilaterally to stop enforcing what's called special conditions, I think, if I'm using the phrase properly. And please correct me since you know the law better than I do. But this basically has to do with extenuating circumstances for a crime such as murder. In this case, whether it's torture, whether it's multiple homicides, or, by the way, the homicide of law enforcement. That's now any special conditions on those kinds of murders are off the table, according to this DA?
That's correct. Most of them are, and they're called enhancements that a judge can enhance a sentence of a convicted criminal. And oh, by the way, he's definitely not going to any cop killer. A suspect that kills a police officer, he just shows his disdain for law enforcement because he's not going to enhance anybody's sentence if you kill a police officer in the line of duty, which is pretty unprecedented. So that's the disdain he has for law enforcement.
Yeah.
And where the jury can possibly do that enhancement and the judge would do that enhancement, but that's off the table.
Let's talk about that for a moment. Let's first focus on the homicide with regard to a law enforcement officer. You'll hear some people in the media, some advocates, some people well-meaning who don't really clearly understand why these laws exist, who would say, well, listen, the murder of my son or my daughter, randomly walking down the street and, he or she is an accountant, why should their life be less valuable than somebody who wears a badge and is a cop? Why should there be special circumstances? Murder is murder.
Well, part of it is hopefully would deter somebody from killing a cop, knowing that they would get life in prison or the death penalty, because that's supposed to deter it. And honestly, Larry, if a person is willing to kill a uniformed police officer, they'll kill anybody. They'll kill you. They'll kill the person walking down the street. So that's part of the reason is it's supposed to be a deterrent because the fact is that the mere fact that you're wearing a uniform and out there to enforce laws, that should be a situation where you get enhanced sentencing.
Let me pause there for a moment, just because I just want to make sure people aren't misunderstanding this, that in some way we're valuing one life over another. Because there's always been this additional penalty if you kill a cop, this sort of makes it easier for the DA's office and, for that matter, the judge to recognize that if this person has such callous disregard for human life that they're willing to risk that extended penalty by killing a cop, then by God they should be put away, right? This is really just sort of a helper to better educate the sentencing process. That if they're going to kill a cop, it means they're the worst of the worst. That's correct, Larry. That's correct. And so now by lifting that, it's clear that this actually, it's I don't want to say it's open season on cops, but basically cops are getting a signal right now that the DA's office will not have their back out there for even the worst possible crime. Well, that's correct. And Jackie Lacey, when an officer was killed in the line of duty, she always did the enhancements because she saw that you're right. It's we're the thin blue line from because of the way the system is right now, and if that gets tweaked just a little bit, it's going to be utter chaos in the city. And the victims are out there. We have. Police officers have their families, and they have victims of violent crime all the time. And this guy is just he's just torching what's right. I mean, I just like I said earlier, it's right now you have a case where you have a DA
and the defense attorney are on the same side, which should never be allowed to happen.
So, let's talk about some of these other enhancements, because it's ironically, I'm interested as to whether there's going to be some pushback with regard to hate crimes. You know, if somebody is murdered and they are LGBTQ, and it is determined through the course of the investigation that the suspect in that murder holds some level of animus against gay people, they would then be eligible for a hate crime enhancement on their sentence. Is that also off the table?
Apparently so. The only thing that I heard, because there's such public outcry, is that sexual predators out there, child molesters, George Gascon now believes that they should do a little bit of jail time, and instead of going on a couch and talking to their shrink and telling them how hard their lives have been and make up excuses for their vile actions. I think that's the only one that I know of, child molesters, that he's even thinking about with doing enhancements on, as far as I know.
Our guest is Craig Lally. He's the president of Los Angeles Police Protective League. We're talking about the latest litany of controversies surrounding George Gascon, the district attorney of Los Angeles County, which, by the way, let's pause for a moment. None of this should be a surprise. We talked about this even before Election Day, because, let's face it, you get what you vote for, and this is exactly what he promised to do, Craig.
I know. I mean, he's holding to his word.
Yeah.
But and be damned the victims, because he's not representing the victims. He thinks his job is to represent criminals along with a defense attorney, and that's what's wrong with the system. I hope there's enough public outcry. You know, in 90 days, there's a potential that we can do a recall on him. If you get enough people upset about it, he may be the shortest stay in the DA's office in the history. So, it's just disgusting, though. I feel so sorry for the victims out there, because our job is to, put bad guys in jail, and a lot of it, we see some pretty heinous stuff out there. And this is a demoralizer for us, too, because we want nothing more to lock these people up, because we know for sure that these people are just going to come out and do the same thing over and over and over again. And that's the sad part. There's going to be more victims because of this. Yeah,
and at this point, people seriously are starting to talk about a recall effort this early in the game. Is that, I mean, listen, I'm still focusing on the recall of Gavin Newsom here, but is that something that you're hearing actually from the rank and file as well, that they'd be motivated to help push this through? Is it that ugly now between the cops and the DA's office?
Well, it's not so much from the membership here. It's more from citizens out there. They're out there calling me. And they're counting down, with a recall. I've gotten probably 25 calls this weekend just from people in the communities out there, and says, hey, how do we get this guy out of office? And, I'm not going to run a campaign for that.
Yeah.
But everybody knows you got to be in office 90 days. But
all right.
It's the citizens out there. The victims are upset about this.
Let me ask you also about these enhancements, this latest thing. By the way, this is what inspired this latest controversy, this back and forth where the victim's mother, since this enhancement has now been taken off of this convicted murderer's sentence, that she was in anguish, and he called her uneducated and said she should keep her mouth shut. These were all things that were passed by lawmakers. This is, again, one of the more infuriating things about this, Craig. We may have the public debate that these enhancements are the wrong thing to do, but there's a way to go about changing the law. Instead, this district attorney, he just decides as the emperor of the county which laws to enforce and which laws not to.
That's right. These enhancements have been passed by the voters, just like the death penalty. The juries are still sentencing people to death. These are juries out there because of the heinous crimes that they have committed, and the law is still on the book that we could, basically there's a death penalty. So it's the same type of situation as the death penalty. Voters have put that on the ballot, and it has passed. And basically, it's an option for the judge and the district attorney to do these enhancements.
I'd always like to close these out by talking about the cops themselves and what the morale is like right now. What are the enlistment numbers right now in terms of is the LAPD fully staffed at the moment, or do we have enough cops? Are we losing cops? Are there enough cops coming in to replace them?
Well, right now, I think you know that some of the politicians want to cut at least, up to 1,000 police officers during all these. The shootings are on the rise, murders are on the rise in the city. So you have some city council members wanting to cut the police department. So as far as we're on a holding pattern here until probably after January, because we don't even know if we are going to have any academy classes anymore. And they're talking about layoffs of police officers. And mind you, this is when shootings and murders are up about 38% for the year of 2020. So that's what we're up against right now. It's and that's why the morale is so bad, because some of these officers are on the job and they're talking about laying them off. Yeah. So it's very difficult right now. It's very tough.
Meanwhile, we've already got statements from the sheriff's offices at the various counties in this area. Are LAPD being utilized to enforce the mayor's COVID restrictions and the restaurant restrictions? Are they being employed in that way?
I don't believe they are. To be honest with you, I haven't had one officer call me on that, so I would say no.
Okay. I just wanted to check in on that as well, considering what this city hall decides to enforce and what they decide not to enforce with regard to public health, as you and I have talked about over the years. We got to leave it there. Please wish a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, a Happy New Year, or whatever anybody is celebrating there at LAPD. We don't care. We just want them to celebrate a little bit and be with their families, Craig.
Thank you very much, Larry. It's a pleasure to be on your show as always.
And in 90 days, let's circle back on this George Gascon thing. We'll see where we are. By that time, we'll already have the petition done for Gavin Newsom. That'll be on the ballot, and then we'll move on to the next one. One at a time, Craig. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I think you'll have a lot of people out there from the community to call you on, supporting you on that. So.
Yep, I think you're right. Thanks, Craig. Larry O'Connor Show on KABC.